Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, as always, presented by our good friends over at ScentLok. You guys know I am a sucker for ScentLok. Just phenomenal toolkits that they have. Their carbon technology for maximum odor absorption. You guys got to go check out our friends over at ScentLok. I am excited about today. I've got Andrew Hughes from Trophy Ridge. Andrew, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Dylan. How you doing today?
Well, we got back from ATA, and seems like everybody got sick. So it was a rough show. I was lucky that I didn't get sick, but a lot of guys on our team did, and ended up having to pull out of Sheep Week and SCI. So, I was one of the lucky ones that didn't get sick, but I still didn't have to go to the other shows. So I kind of got lucky, I guess.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Fortunately, I dodged that bullet as well, but you're right. There's several people who are down for the count last week, but I think everybody's on the up and up at this point.
Now, Andrew, what's your role at Trophy Ridge?
So I am a design engineer. I mainly focus on designing the accessory products. I do some work in youth archery as well. But yeah, my day-to-day is basically coming up with ideas for new stuff, working with our product management to fill the spaces in our offerings that they'd like to see. And, beyond that, it's just working through designs to see, if these ideas actually can work out.
I'm excited. The reason I'm excited is because I've gotten a lot of questions, a lot of messages, a lot of emails about these new Trophy Ridge accessories. Specifically the digital React and how it works and what it does and kind of what sets it apart. And so I'm excited to dive in with somebody who knows all the inner workings of that site, and it's not just me saying, yeah, it's a cool site, because it is a phenomenal site. And Trophy Ridge this last week at ATA kind of dropped 3 new pieces of accessories that I'm really excited about. That I personally believe will take Trophy Ridge and the accessory line kind of to that next level. And so let's dive in, man, and let's start with the one that everybody wants to know about, that React Digital. Run me through the details of that React Digital.
Yeah, absolutely. We are just as excited about it, if not more so, than everybody else. But yeah, we're very excited to reveal the digital React at ATA. And just to dive in, like you're saying, we have 2 offerings in that product. We're coming out of the gate with the single pin and what we call the trio hooded version of that sight. And the single pin actually is going to be available in a left hand as well. So the details, right? Because that's what everybody wants to know. How does it work? What's it do? If your listeners are familiar with React technology, that's very helpful. But just as a quick refresher, the idea behind React technology, which Trophy Ridge has used for many years now, is that you can actually sight in 2 of your sight pins at really any combination of distances, and that every one of your other sight pins will then be sighted in. And it really helps build confidence in archers who are not as used to shooting at further distances. So, if you can sight in your 20-yard pin and then step back and sight in your 30-yard pin, your 40, 50, 60, so on and so forth is then sighted in as well. And you can refine that sight even further by stepping back to those further distances and making slight tweaks. But every time you make a tweak to a further distance, say you sighted in at 20 and 30, and now you're sighting in or you're shooting at 50, any tweaks that you make to that 50-yard pin, it's going to make the closer distances even more accurate. So we've taken that technology and we've integrated it into a digital display that I really like to explain it to people by saying it's kind of like having infinite sight tapes built into your sight. So it's going to display the yardage that your pin is at in any position. So it works like a traditional mover sight. And so you run it to the top, you sight in your 20 by gang adjusting. Of course, the sight still has toolless micro windage and elevation adjustment. They both come with second and third axis adjustment as well. And so once you've got that 20-yard pin sighted in, you turn the sight on and you basically assign that pin location. Just with a few clicks of a button, you're telling the sight, hey, this is my 20-yard pin location. In the case of the Trio, you're actually using the bottom pin as your 40, and the module has that flexibility built into it. You essentially, instead of setting it for your 20, you set it for your 40. But anyway, going back to the single pin version, you set your first pin at 20, and then you immediately go to the second pin setting, and it already has a live readout of where the sight is set at. It's kind of pre-programmed with a middle range bow speed. So really anybody could set their 20, step back to 30, and they're going to be on target. And then, essentially you're just going to dial the sight down from there and start shooting, and then you make adjustments accordingly. So you either dial it up a little bit or dial it down with the main adjustment wheel to get your sight on at 30 yards, and then you're setting that location as your 30-yard pin location. Once you've done that, basically the sight is set. You can start shooting it. If you've got the room between the hood and your arrow, you could step back to 80 or 90 yards and you'd be really close. But again, just like any other sight, when you do so, when you make adjustments at those further distances, it makes your closer range readings even more accurate than before. So I know that's a bit of a long-winded explanation, but that's kind of the main functionality of the site, and we think that it's going to be absolutely great for pretty much anybody who uses it.
So getting to talk with you guys at ATA, I have been a React Trio guy for a long time, the better part of 5 years, I guess, and I've just absolutely loved that site. However, there were a couple things I didn't like about it, and you guys seem to have fixed on the React Digital, and so you shared with me that those pieces would be integrated into the regular React single and the regular React Trio. One of those being the wheel. That wheel is super smooth. One of my biggest pet peeves, and obviously I'm not going to name any other brands, but one of my biggest pet peeves is when you really have to crank down on a wheel to get it to move. Because if I'm sitting in a tree stand, man, I want to slide my hand up there and barely turn it and get it to where I need it to be. And that the new digital has such a smooth wheel. And so that's coming over to the regular React Trio and single. And then on the Trio, one of the biggest issues I've had with it is not having toolless micro adjust 20 and 30 pins. So in other words, on the regular React, you've got to loosen the 20-yard and 30-yard pin with an Allen wrench and move it down and try to tighten it back up. And those can become difficult to really micro and fine sight in. And so that's another thing. You guys now have micro toolless 20 and 30-yard pins on the React Digital Trio, and that's going to be coming over to the regular React. So not only did you guys come out with a digital that fixed issues small issues that I had with the regular Trio, but you're also going to be fixing the regular Trio with those things. So even if you don't want to go digital, the regular Trio is now better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we really wanted to bring a elevated user experience for both of these products. And of course, anytime we come up with new technology, you could see across all the brands that we want our customers to have access to those improvements. So to your exact point, I mean, just to kind of put a finer, a finer look at it, our previous mover sights had what I think is a fairly typical approach, where you essentially have a knurled wheel, that's got kind of a coarse texture to it, and it's pressed into like a polymer rail, so it can grab that material, and that's how you can make that vertical adjustment on the sight. But in this case, we actually have a helical gear that's machined on the inside of this sight, and it's interfacing with, it's still a polymer rack, but to your point, it makes for a much smoother turn. You can actually adjust it. You can really fine tune it. There's a couple set screws in the back that control the pressure of that gear onto the surface. And not to mention the fact that once you've got that the way you want it, there's essentially like a lockdown knob that's built into the actual adjustment wheel. So, you can have it, loose is probably not the right word, but, kind of that very smooth feeling as, when you're using the sight, but then you can actually turn that lockdown knob, and you can either lock it into place, or you can just adjust the pressure it takes to move the sight up and down. And every user is going to have kind of a different preference there. So we're excited about that development. And you're right, it is going to be a running change in our existing products, as well as the fact that the micro adjust that we have on that 20 and 30 yard pin on the Trio hood, that technology, we've actually had it in our Fix series sights for a couple of years now, and our customers absolutely love it. And so we essentially just integrated that mechanism into the hood of the Trio. It doesn't make it any more bulky. It really is almost the same shape as our original Trio hood, but it just absolutely increases the ease of adjustment of those pins, and it works really well. Not to mention the fact that we actually have a little bit more adjustment in those pins just with this setup. They have a little more travel to them. So just making sure that we're hitting pretty much every archer that wants to use this sight, they're going to be able to.
So basically what Andrew means is on the knob, which I had this as one of my questions. I don't like to lock down my knob. That way, if I need to make a real quick adjustment, a deer walks in and I thought it was coming in at 30, it jumps out at 40. I don't want to have to unlock the knob and then move it. And so I like to leave my knob to where I can turn it pretty easily, but I know that it's going to stay there. And so that wheel will function like that, correct? Like I can shoot all day long with that wheel not completely locked down, and it's not going to move on me.
That's absolutely right. And the cool thing about the way the knob works is essentially it's adjusting just tension, so you can crank it all the way down to where you really can't even move that adjustment wheel, or you can back it off just a little bit so it's actually very stiff. But in a situation where you'd want to move the sight, it's definitely not going to move without you doing it, but you can just make it a little more difficult to move on purpose. So again, it's just fully adjustable, the tension that you can put on there. Not to mention the fact that I didn't even say, we've moved to a new adjustment wheel design on this side as well. The previous single pin and Trio sights had like a 4-spoke turn knob, if you will. And in this case, we've actually got just a wheel that has a knurled surface to it. It's a 1/2 inch wide. It's super easy to get your fingers on, and it fits your hand really well. So, all those improvements are integrated here into this new sight. And I hate to jump to even a new subject, but I want to make sure I touch on a couple other features of these sights. I went through the process in which you sight this, you sight it in to begin with the 2 pin locations. But the coolest thing I think that we've been able to integrate into these 2 sights is the speed mode. I can't remember if that's exactly what we call it, but I typically call it the speed mode or the speed setup, because essentially what you're able to do is, starting the same way, you sight in your 20 or your 40 yard pin in the case of the Trio hood. And then you could just shoot an arrow through a chronograph, and you actually go into the settings of the sight and you simply put in your chronograph speed of your arrow that you're going to shoot with. And that is that's basically your sight set up. Because of the difference between bow setups and archers and so on and so forth, the different things, there is a slight variation, right? So it's not like the sight is a chronograph, but you're putting the speed in, and especially like on the single pin, it's gonna have guys on target at 40 yards. Usually 50 and 60 is where the slight variations start to show up. And again, just in the same way when you're sighting in first and second pin, any adjustments that you make there, after, are just going to make the rest of your pin locations that much more accurate. So that's a really cool thing, and that actually even helps the dealers who are going to be selling these sights in their shops, because they can help an archer set up their bow, set the sight up, sight it in at 20 inside their space, and if they don't have that longer range for people to shoot at 40, 50, 60 yards, they actually can just use that chronograph speed and get guys out the door with a bow that's pretty much ready to go, with this new sight on it. So that's very exciting for us, not only for the end user, but even for the guys who are selling this product to our customers.
In last week's episode, I was with Nathan Crick from Identical Draw, and he said they did a sighting in test, and basically one of them had the React Digital and one of them had a competitor sight, and they wanted to see who could sight it in the fastest. And the React Digital was sighted in like 5 minutes. And when I say sighted in, I mean from 0 to 100. And the other one, took however long, 15, 20 minutes.
That's awesome.
And so that's a perfect example of that speed test just does it super quick. And then as you start shooting, you can really refine that down. Didn't you say that, isn't there a way to you can go in, so like if you sighted in 20, 30, 40, 50, if you sighted those in, you can go in and see how fast your arrow's flying? Didn't you say wasn't that a function?
Yeah, I mean, it is technically a function. Kind of like I was saying, the sight doesn't necessarily function like a chronograph. So if you sight in your pins, you can go in and look at the speed that kind of correlates with that pin gap. It doesn't necessarily mean your bow is shooting exactly that speed, right? It might be plus or minus 5 feet per second or so, but it's going to be pretty close. The cool thing about it, though, is if you remember what speed your pin gaps are set at, that's kind of like your setting. So if something, heaven forbid, were to happen to that module, something, if you to drop your bow and something hit it just perfect and it just, smashes the screen or something, which again, it's a very robust sight, so it's not a huge concern. But worst case scenario, something goes wrong. If you remember what your speed is, you could basically unscrew the module, replace it with a new one, set your 20-yard pin location, and then set your speed, and your bow would be, or your sight would be set up exactly the way it was before. So it is kind of like, remembering your reference point on the sight.
What's the pin sizes on the sights?
So on the single pin, we have a 19 thousandths and a 10 thousandths. And then on the trio, they're going to come with a 10 thousandths for the bottom pin, which is a vertical, and a 19 on the top two pins, that 20 and 30-yard pin location.
I get a lot of questions on why that. Why the two different pin sizes. I think I probably got 3 or 4 or 5 emails about that. Here's your answer. Is at 20 and 30, which is your top 2 pins, the target's not far away. However, if you get out to 60, 70, 80, and you have a bigger pin, you're going to cover up your entire target. And so you want a smaller pin, that way you don't cover up your target. And so the 2 pins being bigger at the top are good because, at 20 yards, you can still bury it in whatever you're trying to aim it at. However, if you use a 19th at, say 80 yards, you're going to be fully covering up, if you're shooting a 3D, you're going to be fully covering up that 3D's vitals. And so you want a smaller pin so you can really aim it better and aim it more precise. And so it seems as though, Andrew, and I don't mean to toot Trophy Ridge's horn here, but it seems as though Trophy Ridge has thought of everything. So kudos to you guys. An awesome site. Now, one of the coolest features, in my opinion, is...
We try.
You try pretty hard. The one of the coolest features, in my opinion, is the different Aero Profiles. Something that you could never get on a regular trio. If you shoot different arrow setups for whitetail and then elk or moose or hogs or whatever, you can have different Aero Profiles set up inside of that sight. And you don't have to sight your bow in every time. You switch your arrows and you change your Aero Profile. Walk me through kind of how that works.
Yeah, it is a great feature. It's actually super simple. Amongst other settings that you can save in the site, just like you said, there's multiple profiles, 5 actually, and that are built in to the site, in the sense that you could have 5 different setups, 5 different pin gap settings, different speeds, etc., in this module all at the same time, and they're going to stay there under each one of those profiles. And simply switching from profile 1 to 2 or 3 is going to bring back up the settings that you went through the effort of dialing in with that site. So yeah, just to your point, you'll be able to have that in there. I think it's actually kind of funny. I've seen some of the feedback online since the release of the site, and I did see where several people were like, it'd be really cool is, if you could have settings for different arrows. And it's funny because in a lot of cases, somebody's already responded and said, oh yeah, you can. They've already got that in there. So it's a great thing. It's something really for people to play with, and just see like how can you implement this into your hunting style and your hunting setup that's going to benefit you the most. Because I've had those thoughts myself for sure. Even different like hunting scenarios, shooting a heavier arrow if you're going to shoot a shorter distance, and so on and so forth, and being able to have that flexibility and not have to go through like, oh my gosh, I want to shoot this arrow, I'm going hunting here this weekend, and I'm going to have to resight my whole bow in and everything. No, you just simply change the settings and maybe change your elevation a little bit, and you're good to go. So there are several other settings I'll mention on the site. Some of it's kind of trivial, but some of it also is just kind of cool. So for the guy who's shooting longer distance, who wants that kind of refinement, you can actually have the site display in half-yard increments. So instead of just displaying in whole yards, it can display in halves. And that actually, it can be a perception thing, but man, when you're standing out at 70, 80, and 90 yards, when you're moving from, say, 87 to 88 yards, whenever you're going, even in that 1 yard increment, you can really see the site housing move. And so you're kind of questioning like, okay, well, is it kind of at the top of this movement or is it towards the bottom? But with the half yard, it basically takes that out. I mean, when you're at a certain distance, it's there. It's just there. The other thing is that as you're dialing the site, when you hit every 10-yard increment, the site will actually change to a brighter color just temporarily. And it's kind of like a quick reference, like, oh, I hit a 10 yards. So when you hit 20, 30, 40, it's going to kind of pop that different color. And it's kind of a quick visual reminder that you're passing a 10-yard increment. And that's going to be true no matter what setting you have, because the color of the screen can be changed as well. So the background color can be green, yellow, red, blue, aqua, pink, orange. So, it's everybody can kind of have it the way they want it. You can actually change the site from yards to meters. So for those who are from Canada or they're in Europe and they're just used to the metric system, they can use it that way if they'd like. You've already mentioned the profiles, and the site actually even has a section in there where it can change orientation, because we use the same module for our left and right-handed units. So it's all built in here in this one spot, and yeah, it just works really great.
Now, what is the what's the price point on these sites?
So the single pin price point is $359.99, and the trio is $20 more, so $379.99. We know that competes very well with other electronic type sites on the market. Yes, the features are different, right? We're not trying to be the same as, say, a site that does range finding, but this sight is one that's so simple to set up. It's so easy in comparison to even a regular bow sight that it has its advantages. And, we think that price point is prime for a lot of customers who are even already spending that on other mover sights that don't have any kind of electronic features built in. So, yeah, we're super excited about that. I do want to jump to, again, I'm afraid because I missed it. I'm afraid we're going to miss it, but that is, with this being an electronic sight, it obviously has power, and it's got a battery. So everybody's probably wondering, like, okay, well, it's got a battery. What I'm gonna be out hunting. It's gonna die on me. I'm not gonna be able to see what I'm doing. We've thought of that, and we've worked through it. So it does have a rechargeable lithium-ion battery in the module. It recharges with a micro USB cable, probably the most common cable on the market. But the sight does come with a cable and a charging block. You could plug that cable into your car. You could plug it into your computer, to a power bank, as well as the wall. So any of those options work. On a full charge, the sight, if you turn it on and just basically don't touch it, leave it alone, it'll stay charged for a minimum of 35 to 40 hours. I've seen them go 3 days, so like a full 72 hours before they run out of power. And that's if you turn the sight on and you leave it on. If you turn the sight off, just by turning the power off, say when you're not hunting and you're not in the stand, it could go months. I typically, if I'm, during hunting season, I was using this sight. I was hunting every weekend and usually at least once during the week. I would typically not have to charge my sight, but once every 2 to 3 weeks. So if you are, if you get kind of in a good habit with it, it's basically a non-issue. It's so easy to deal with. In the worst case scenario, that a hunter would actually set their bow down, they put their bow in the case, hang it on the wall, they forget to turn the sight off, and they come back the next week to try to hunt. We have a couple fail safes. The sight does actually go into what we might call a limp mode, where the sight actually, the screen is off. It's in kind of a hibernation, but if you touch the wheel or touch a button on the module, it will wake back up and you can use it for 20 seconds before it will shut back down again. And that way you can kind of get your bearings. And that feature is mainly there to protect the battery, to keep the battery from becoming too low of charge and becoming damaged. So that way, worst case scenario, a hunter is able to actually kind of get his bearings. But even still, there's a spot on the opposite side of the housing where you can put a sight tape, and we provide our sight tapes in the package just like we do with all our other mover sights, and we've been using those tapes for years now, and they work really great. So there are kind of multiple backups in that case, but nonetheless, the sights actually have great battery life even still.
I heard one guy say, yeah, because that's what I want to do is go plug my bow in at night. And I said, I didn't say it. Somebody said it. They said, well, dude, you have a cigarette lighter in your truck. Like, to and from your tree stand, just pop it in there, and you'll always be good. And I'm like, that really is a whole lot simpler than it sounds. Like, it's not something I have to remember to do. If I just, when I get in my truck, some of my tree stands are 30 minutes, some of my tree stands are an hour. But if I always just plug my sight in on the way to and from my tree stand, then I know that sight's always going to be charged up. And I never have to worry about it. Now, like Andrew said, even if you're on a 5, 6 day, 7 day, backpacking hunt, there are some things that you can do in order to maintain that battery life. If worse comes to worse, you still have the sight tape on the back, but then also everybody carries a battery pack with them in the backcountry. Just pop it in at night. Just plug it in at night, charge your sight up, and you're good to go. And so, I don't think the battery life issue is as big of an issue as some people think it might be. Because I saw the battery life, and I saw it being left on in the power save mode or whatever you guys call it, and it basically lasting throughout ATA of guys coming by playing with it, jiggling it, rotating it, and And so I don't think the battery life becomes as big of an issue as a lot of people think it might be.
Yeah, it actually, like, talking about the scenario that you just brought up, a full week of backpack hunting. Um, the site is so easy to turn on that, like, literally you just tap the power button and it comes on. So you don't even have to hold the power button down for it to come on. You do for it to turn off. But let's say that you are on that hunt, right? Well, if your bow is strapped to your pack, just turn the sight off. I bet if a guy is out hunting, in the mountains and they're hiking for a week straight, if they basically just turn their sight off at night, and when it's strapped to their pack and they're not actually carrying it in their hand because they're on a stalk, they probably wouldn't have to charge their sight the entire week. I actually just had a couple sits this last weekend trying to get some late season success here, and I had a bow that I had set up. I had it hanging at home. I didn't get to hunt very much over the holidays, and so I hadn't touched that bow since probably the second week of December. And I popped it on this weekend, and I had a full battery. It hadn't been charged in close to a month, and the battery's completely full. So again, if you just simply have the sight turned off or powered down, it holds that battery life like for a long time.
That's awesome. Now I'm excited to get into the quiver, but before so, let me give a quick thank you to our friends over at Boning. Boning has been the powerhouse in vanes and arrow wraps for a very long time. And now, it's not new, but they have some incredible Fredbear branded products. Their Fredbear flannel wraps is actually a screen grab of Fredbear's actual flannel. They've got the Fredbear camo on some wraps. They have Fredbear veins. So go check out Boning because they have some incredible Fredbear branded products, but they also have all of the tools you need to build your own arrows. So whether you're the guy who wants to build your own arrows or you just need some components to build the arrows, go check out Boning for all of your arrow building needs. And also, they have recently launched their pocket quiver, which is just phenomenal. If you haven't checked out the pocket quiver, you got to go check it out. Go check out Boning. I am a sucker for a good quiver, and here's why. Because I believe, old school, everybody took their quiver off. They get to their tree stand, they take the quiver off, and they're ready to hunt. Why? Because it was big and bulky, and it threw your bow off of balance. But if you have a good quiver, it can act as a piece of balancing equipment for your bow. And it can actually improve your shooting with it on. Not just make it better if you take it off, but improve it with it being on. You can balance your bow better with your quiver. And this Versalite quiver is no different. It's very true for this quiver. So walk me through the details of this Versalite quiver.
Yeah, the Versalite Quiver is just the next evolution in the quivers that we offer here at Trophy Ridge. We obviously have a product that's one of the best quivers on the market that has a light integrated in the hood. And so we're basically taking that feature and we're bringing it into a new light, right? So we've got, not only does the Versalite have a light built into the hood, it's now also rechargeable in the same way that the new digital React sight is. So it has a lithium ion battery. It recharges with a micro USB cable that comes in the package. It's perfectly bright. It's a green color, so it works great as you're walking in and out of the woods. Honestly, we're surprised that we're one of the few companies that offers that type of a product, but our customers love it so much. Now, the VersaQuiver. Why is it the VersaQuiver? Well, it's very versatile. Yes, obviously we're playing on words there, but doesn't everybody? The quiver comes as a one-piece quiver. It's a 5-arrow quiver, and it comes in the package built with two 16-inch long carbon rods. So it's a little bit of a longer quiver. Of course, that gives you a significant amount of vertical adjustment on your bow. But it also comes with two 10-inch long rods that you can swap the 16s for. So if you'd like a shorter quiver, you can do that. The top gripper on that quiver is also removable, so you can choose which one you'd like. I personally run just a single gripper at the bottom, but some guys love the 2 grippers. And not only that, but the grippers come with standard Aero as well as micro diameter shaft grippers as well. So it's going to fit pretty much any archer that wants to use it. It also can be attached to your bow in more than one way. So you have a bracket on there that can be mounted to a sight, a sight bracket. In the traditional way, it's got plenty of adjustability in it, both front to back, and then even how far you put the mount on there. It's got kind of like we call it the football or the eyeball shape post. So that way, when you slide the quiver onto the mount, it doesn't want to swivel on you. And then it has a cam lock, which you can adjust in the locked position, which is really convenient as well. If you don't want to mount your quiver to your sight, the quiver actually comes, again, in the box with a post mount that you can put directly on the riser of your bow. And we have adapters in there for the Matthews riser, for the Hoyt riser, and then the base post has kind of that triangle shape that fits all of our bows as well as several other manufacturers. And so not only can you mount the quiver to your sight, but you can mount it directly to the riser as well with the exact same cam lock bracket. So it's a very versatile quiver. It's got a lot of ways that you can take it apart and put it back together. And, because of that, we think it's going to fit basically any archer and any bow, regardless of arrow length or, where you prefer to have your quiver on the bow. Stepping further into the quiver discussion, we know that there is a market for 2-piece guys. I love a 2-piece quiver, but we also know that it's a minority in the market. So we want to serve those customers, to say the least. So we also have a conversion kit that goes with the Versalite Quiver. And that conversion kit, you can take all the components that come in the 1-piece quiver box, and you can build a 2-piece quiver. It's kind of like quiver Legos. You can just take these parts, apart, and you can put them back together. And there's, again, multiple ways, multiple positions that you can use that 2-piece quiver design in, but it has everything in the box there. So a guy that ends up shooting the 2-piece, he even has that flexibility to step back and build a 1-piece quiver. He has basically, all that adjustability built into that product.
Now that is, it's something that blows my mind. I can't tell you how many guys I show my Hexlite quiver to, and they're like, "Holy crap, dude! Lights in the hood." And I'm like, "Where have you been, bro?" Because it's like that alone has literally changed the way I hunt. I no longer have to carry a flashlight. Getting in your stand is so much more effective because you can flip the inside hood on and see what you're doing to get in your backpack, to get out, whatever you're getting out of your backpack to get set up. You don't have to turn a bright headlight on and blow everything out of the it is a game changer, just the simple lights in the hood. And I see so many guys, and I tell them about it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I need this." It is phenomenal. It's incredible. And now you've taken it and you've put it on a sleeker, more streamlined design in a quiver and a lighter quiver. But also, you can get it, like Andrew's already said, you can get it even closer to your riser than you could get the Hexlite. It's got more adjustability as far as tilt, lean, in and out, up and down. It's got all this adjustability so you can really play with it, draw back, shoot your bow, see if you're having to fight that bubble to keep it center, and then play with your quiver more. And you can run this quiver to really be a finishing, balancing piece of your bow, to where when you come to full draw, boom, your bubble is set right in the center, and that bow is perfectly level, and it's due to your quiver. You don't have to take your quiver off. You don't have to fight a quiver, but it also has some features that no other quiver has, and that's some lights in the hood. How did you get that quiver so much lighter?
Well, we approached it from different angles. Obviously, like we've talked about, we wanted to make sure we had adjustability. I think one of the things with the Hexlite quiver, which I actually worked on in the past, was that the grippers, while being having a very positive hold on the arrow, they were a little bulky, a little heavier than maybe they could have been, and so that was kind of one of the areas that I looked to really help reduce the weight. So the grippers are significantly streamlined in comparison to previous versions, but they still do a great job holding the arrows. There's a little bit less rubber in the hood, not so much so that it causes a problem. What's in there gets the job done, but there's a little bit less there, a little less material in the hood itself, as well as the fact that the rods, the vertical rods that make up the height of the quiver, are carbon rods. They're virtually the same thing that you would have in, say, a crossbow arrow or bolt. So it's a fully carbon rod versus the Hexlite having kind of like a mix, a material mix in there. So yeah, we basically have just tried to pick apart every section of that quiver and say, okay, where can we reduce the weight here? Where have we used more than we need? And then just make sure that it functions well, but then at the kind of the optimum material usage point.
Now, let me give a note to my guys, my traditional guys. In my opinion, Trophy Ridge makes the best quivers there are for a compound. However, if you're a longbow guy, you guys know I'm a huge fan of Selway Archery. And you guys know that Bear Archery has kind of worked with Chris Perino and Selway to design the Grayling Quiver, which is that old Fred Bear green quiver that gives your bow that real nostalgic look, but also an incredible performing quiver. And Bear Archery is actually now carrying those Grayling quivers, so you can go to beararchery.com and you can order those Grayling quivers. So if you're a traditional guy, let me just throw in there that the best quiver on the market, Selway Archery, has come to beararchery.com. And then if you're not a plastic hardcover, a hard quiver kind of guy, you can always go to Selway and get you a beautiful leather hood. But that's exciting that Bear Archery has begun to carry those quivers. So head over to beararchery.com, check out the Grayling Quiver from Selway. On to the Shock Stop, a new stabilizer. Wait, I missed something. What's the price point on the Versalite?
Right. We definitely want to touch that. So the Versalite one-piece quiver comes in $149.99. For those guys who really want the two-piece conversion kit, that's going to be available for $39.99. And while we're still on the subject, just to touch on it, that quiver, that single, the one-piece quiver with the 16-inch rods, as it comes in the package, weighs in at 10 ounces.
Good grief. That's light, ladies and gentlemen. That is, hence the name Versa Light. It's light. But you also, I told you guys in the naming of this quiver, you guys played on the word Versa, and then you also played on the word light, because it is a very light quiver, but it also has lights in it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, why not, right?
What are you going to do, right? No, now on to the Shock Stop, and before I let you dive into the details and really what it is, my first impression of it, I walked up to the Bear Archery booth, and the Hunting Public guys were in the booth hanging out, and somebody was giving a demonstration on this stabilizer. And they told Aaron from the Hunting Public, they said, hold this bow and hit it on the top of the riser, and just tell me when the vibration stops. And, he hit it, and he said, 3 seconds later, he said, okay, it stopped. Then they screwed the stabilizer on, and they said, now hit it. And he said there was never any vibration, and they said, exactly. And I heard Aaron just say, good Lord, man, you got to teach your dealers how to do that, because if I was in a pro shop and a dealer did that, that's the stabilizer I just bought. And so then in my mind, I'm thinking, well, now I got to check this thing out. And so really great stabilizer design, which the Hitman is phenomenal. The Hitman is incredibly sleek looking. However, I believe that, and the thing with the Hitman is you got the back bars, you got the quick disconnects, you've got the Hitman setups, with a 10-inch and an 8-inch and an 8-inch and a 6-inch. You've got all that stuff to play with. The shock stop is an incredible design to stop all the vibration, just not all of that, mumbo jumbo that the Hitman has. So walk me through the details of the shock stop.
Sure, absolutely. And you're totally right. I mean, the Hitman series has so much, variety built into it. We all obviously shoot them here. I shoot like a 9-inch on the front with a 6-inch sidebar. And quite frankly, I haven't had the shock stop on my setup yet, just because it's so new for us. But man, I can't wait to throw one of these on my sidebar. I think it's going to be like just world changing in regards to how that bow feels. But yes, that demonstration that you recalled, it was one of the most fun things to do with the dealers that were at the ATA show. To see their eyes light up when you handed them the bow back with the shock stop on there, it was just fun, honestly. It comes as an 8-inch stabilizer, and it actually has a weight that's essentially suspended on the interior of the main tube, the main shaft of the stabilizer, and by doing so, it's isolated with a flexible material. Because of that, it's able to basically take all that extra vibration in the bow and dissipate it without you having to feel it through your hand. So, I mean, it really is that simple. It's not super complicated. It just works. It just does its job very well. So yes, we're coming out of the gate with an 8-inch version of that. And it is going to retail for $69.99, which honestly, for a carbon rod stabilizer in and of itself is really a great price, not to mention the fact that its performance is basically, one of the best out there.
So if I understand this correctly, it's essentially a carbon rod that's full of rubber. Is that?
No, not exactly. The rubber is actually isolated towards the end of the stabilizer. And then the weight that's part of the stabilizer, that's helping do that job of balancing your bow. Not only is it there to help with that, just like a typical stabilizer would be, but it actually is able to move. So it's not that the rubber is throughout the whole thing. It's just that the counterbalance weight out at the front of the stabilizer is able to move enough that when your bow vibrates, the vibration that is still there in the bow, it goes through that instead of through your hand.
I gotcha. Makes sense. Guys, go check out the shock stop. Go check out the Versalite. Go check out the Digital React. Find yourself a Trophy Ridge dealer. Play with them. They're phenomenal. I truly believe that Trophy Ridge is tools that bow hunters can trust, and now they've just kind of expanded that toolkit and that toolbox for us to pull from. Andrew, I'm big on asking my guests a hunting tip. What's one tip or field note you've got for us?
Well, I'll stick with the one that's taught me the most lessons, and that is hunt the wind, because you can't fool a deer's nose. I think I want to just hop in here real quick before I'm done. It would only be prudent of me to make sure that I make it very clear that all these new offerings that Trophy Ridge has to offer have been an incredible team effort on the part of the team here at Trophy Ridge. James Mogul is the product manager. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today to talk about these new accessories, but he's been pivotal in driving the Trophy Ridge brand forward and making sure that we're offering products to the customer that not only that they want, but that they didn't even know they wanted. In the case of the Digital React, and the other
didn't know you needed.
That's right, man. That's right. And the other engineers who were directly involved in this project, David Hahn, absolutely drove some of the early development of Digital React, as well as a lot of the previous React technology sites in the Trophy Ridge line, as well as Sean, who's another one of the engineers here. He did a great job working on the shock stop stabilizer, and we had great help with guys, kind of in a third party sense, helping us with the electronic development and the program writing for the Digital React. So again, I just want to make it very clear that This was a massive team effort, and there's been many, many hands that have been laid on this project throughout its development.
Well, and let me just do my due diligence in saying good job. The Bear Archery and Trophy Ridge booth at ATA was the highlight. Every time I walked by that booth, it was absolutely popping. People were drooling over the sights. People were amazed at the stabilizer. People were looking all over that new quiver. And you guys really just did a phenomenal job. So from the bottom of my heart to the entire Trophy Ridge team, good job, because you guys absolutely killed it.
Well, we all really appreciate that, and we're just excited to keep pushing and keep moving the ball forward.
Now, before we go, let me give a final thank you to our friends over at Koa Optics. Koa Optics is, in my opinion, and I know that it's all opinion, but in my opinion, the finest Japanese glass that one could ever buy. I've used Koa spotting scopes for about 5 years, and I've used Koa binoculars for about 4 years. And I've just fallen in love with their glass. So go check out Koa Optics for all of your spotting scope and binocular needs, because they are absolutely phenomenal. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it greatly. I'm excited to get to play with some of these things and get to put them on my bow and get to just test them out. So again, good job to Trophy Ridge. Guys, go check out all these 3 new products. But thanks for listening. You guys have a great week.
Thanks, Dylan.